Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the latest episode of Beyond the Brief. We're super lucky to have Sam Gammell here today. Sam is the VP, Head of Advisor Marketing with Capital Group. Sam, we're super happy to have you here. Thank you. Please start off by telling us a bit about your background and what you're up to lately.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, and thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I am a career marketer. I've been doing this a really long time. I started out, I thought I wanted to work in sports marketing. And so at university, volunteered in the athletic department and then went on to work for the Los Angeles Dodgers and quickly realized that working in sports was a little bit like working at Disneyland. When you see Mickey Mouse with his head off behind stage, it was like, oh man, I think I just want to be a fan. So I transitioned out of that, worked for a couple small agencies, and through that time realized I actually wanted to be the client. I wanted to be the one setting the strategy and then working with creatives and other folks to make it so. So I went and got my MBA because all the jobs I was interested in on the client side, you needed an MBA. So I did that and discovered brand management, which was this wonderful combination of both marketing as well as general management. And I was sold from the beginning. Ended up going to work for Kraft Foods right out of business school, which was a tremendous opportunity. I worked on the Oscar Mayer lines of business, so if you have Wienermobile questions, we could talk about that. But I learned how to run a business, and I learned how to be a marketer. And I thought that was a really formative experience, just giving me a really great toolkit in terms of customer insights, in terms of communication strategy, promotion strategy, product strategy, pricing, sales, right? All of those things. And it was a great experience. At a certain point, several years in, I realized that, for me, I wanted to work in an organization that had a little bit more room to create your own path. At the time, consumer packaged goods was very prescriptive in terms of, you check these boxes, you move to this level, you check these boxes, you move to this level, and so on. And while I learned a lot, I thought it was time for something different. I never in a million years thought I'd work in financial services, but I got a call from a headhunter and was connected with Capital Group. And that was 13 years ago. And I joined Capital Group at a really interesting time when it was post the 2008 financial crisis. The world had changed, right? Not just in the financial services industry, but across so many industries. And Capital wanted to make marketing a more strategic part of their business. And so they hired a bunch of classically trained marketers from outside of financial services and brought us in and taught us the industry. And we got to build a strategic marketing function for Capital. So for those folks that don't know, Capital Group is a global asset manager. Um, and this was a whole new thing for me. I've had 6 different jobs now since I've been at Capital and really had a chance to build out a much more sophisticated and now modern, like truly multidisciplinary marketing function that is global, which is great. I'm one part of that, right? It took a whole village to do that. But it's been an incredible experience. And I never thought, right, going from selling hot dogs to moms to selling mutual funds, right, to financial advisors, which is kind of where I started, would be so interesting, but it really has been. So I'm happy to talk about that transition and everything as well. And I live in Los Angeles with my family, and that brings us to today.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you've had several roles inside Capital Group. Talk a little bit about the journey you've had there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not unlike brand management. In consumer packaged goods, oftentimes you're rotating brands every, I don't know, 2, 3 years or so. It's a little bit like that experience here at Capital, although you had to carve your own path a little bit more. But I've had a chance to work. I started as an individual contributor, right? A senior marketing specialist coming in, working on more like product type of marketing, a few product launches. So I was learning like what the product was as I was right putting together these launch plans and other things. Through that got opportunities to work on other parts of our business, got to work on our retirement business, became a more senior role, really got to establish more kind of client-based marketing, meaning that recognizing we had different audience segments, there were different segments of our sales force. So how do you actually go to market with that? It's not a one size fits all. It was kind of the days of getting into more personalization and a more customized approach for different segments of the market. Then got to move on as we made ourselves available in new distribution channels. it was a little bit like bringing the like grocery business, like shopper marketing, to financial services as Capital Group's products were now in new stores, if you will. And then moved on into even more senior roles, leading various client segments across the business. Um, I spent about 6 years leading the marketing for our private client services business, which is an in-house financial advisory or wealth management practice. And so we are the actual financial advisors working with our end clients. So that was exciting to get back to the B2C side of things for a little bit. And then I just recently moved into a role back on our B2B side, leading the marketing for our US-based asset management business with the financial advisor audience segment, which is the largest part of Capital Group's business. So it's been really cool to be able to have all of those experiences and see them build on themselves. And it's really, I tell everyone at Capital Group, the good news is there's no career path, no standard career path here. The bad news is there's no standard career path here. So you have to be really proactive in that. But it's been interesting. I'm sure you felt the same in your career. Every opportunity kind of prepares you for the next one. And that's been very much my experience. And truly moving more towards kind of those CMO type of roles, right? Leveraging my knowledge of the business plus marketing. That's really been my career path here at Capital Group.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the finance arena is regulated pretty heavily, on some level, making it stupidly simple. A checking account's a checking account, right? The mechanisms are out there. But one of the things that's fascinated me about it, as I've come to know it over the years, working with all kinds of different financial services firms, the perception from a consumer perspective is that it's the same everywhere. So then you buy based on either reference or your family works with, or, some other mechanism,
Hmm.
proximity. Sometimes your company recommends. But when you actually look into it and understand it deeply, there's so many flavors of product. There's
Yeah.
yeah, I remember a conversation with a friend, and he said, there's only a couple of types of mortgages. And I said, "Oh no, there's like as many as you can, as many numbers as there are, there's that many, types technically, I'm generalizing, but,
Yeah.
do you find that as well, that there's it, even though there's a tight constraint from a regulatory perspective on some level, the product mix that you can offer is much more diverse than I think. And in fact, part of what you have to do as a marketer is keep it simple for people to understand, but also make sure that you have the flexibility for the advisors and the folks that are actually, guiding people through the diversity of products, that they have enough options to really offer the best solution."
Yeah. Well, one, yes, highly regulated. I thought food was highly regulated, right, at Kraft. And then coming here, it's like a whole another level. And our compliance teams are amazing. But there is a lot of hurdles there. I think what's interesting about this business, and when I first started, the primary customer that we work with at Capital Group, it's a professional buyer. So it's either a financial advisor or some other type of professional buyer that is then working with the end investor. And also, regardless of the product, the objectives are kind of the same, right? People at the end of the day, the people that we work with and those clients that they serve, they're saving for their life. So they're trying to either save for retirement or save for college or save to buy that first house or leave a legacy, philanthropic giving. They're business owners, right? Trying to figure out, like, what do I do when I sell my business and how do I structure this? And I care about tax management, all those things. So it's a lot of the same types of objectives, Chris. But to your question, the product mix has become so much more complex, even in the 13 years I've been here and before that. When you look at all of the innovation from a product standpoint, some of it great, right, for investors, some of it, I don't know. There's so many different products out there. So mutual funds, ETFs, separately managed accounts, countless share classes. You've got passive, you've got active, there's all these things. And what's interesting is you would think, oh, with professional buyers, like they must understand all of this. But actually, they don't, and that's not a knock on them. It's just it's so complicated. And so what we strive to do is help make it easy for the professional buyers that we work with to understand the products that we have, how they might fit into a portfolio, how they might benefit ultimately that end investor, and then work to give them the tools to be able to talk about it with their end investors. And it's crazy complicated. Capital Group's kind of prided itself on we used to only offer like, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 like American Funds mutual funds, if anyone's familiar with that brand. Now I don't even know how many different investment products we have across the globe. I mean, it's got to be well in the hundreds, right? Which for us, and that's still kind of small in this industry compared to the Fidelities and the Schwabs and, BlackRocks that are out there. So yeah, it's a pretty complicated product set. And so as a marketer, right, how do we simplify that for all of the audiences? And a lot of it comes down to storytelling, which I think, again, the thing I've learned about changing industries is that is fundamental, right? It doesn't matter what industry you're in, the ability to tell a good story to help your customer understand. And understand how whatever it is you're talking about meets their need and how it can be used, like that's universal. So that's really, the work that we do.
I love it. Along your journey, I imagine you've had some mentors or people that helped you, learn and grow and find your way, especially when you found, either obstacles or trying to forge your path, right?
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about some of those people and some of the kind of lessons they laid out for you. And then I'm always curious to ask if there's any advice that you were given that you thought was gold, but turned out to be, lead or something unuseful.
Yeah. In terms of mentors, I mean, so many over the years. I don't know how anybody, gets through their career without those people, whether it's formal or informal. I think the best mentors in my life have been the ones that, really sit with you side by side and really are there and to help kind of guide and coach and tell you the stuff that you don't want to hear. But right, that like you need to and you need to work on things. So I do have a mentor here at Capital Group. I'll never forget. He was very senior when I started, and one of the first times I knew that this was a leader I wanted to learn from and wanted to emulate is it was I was probably here like 6 months, and we were putting together this PowerPoint something recommendation. And so I go into his office. I was like, I just wanted to run some ideas by you. And he literally turns around, turns on his computer, pulls up an empty PowerPoint, and is like, okay, let's go. And he was like typing, and he was right there, like co-creating with me. Where like somebody at his level didn't have to do that, right? Like it just, but the fact that he was so willing to just get in the weeds with me, do the things that he was asking me to do. He wasn't better than that. He wasn't right. It really made an impression on me, and I've really tried to emulate that. In addition, it's the folks that, tell you when you're not ready for the next role or, hey, you kind of messed that one up, but like, here's something to think about. I always really value that. And as I look to, lead my teams or mentor other people, I really take that to account. The best advice I ever got was control what you can control. Because the worst advice I ever got was this idea of like, that somehow you had to turn your weaknesses into like your superpowers. And that to me, early in my career, I spent so much time focusing on the things I wasn't so good at because I thought that that's what, right, I needed to do to kind of move up and get to that next level. And what I lost sight of was the things that I'm really good at. Um, and it was a kind of paradigm shift a few years ago, and I think this in leadership in general, right? You've kind of seen this shift toward, away from like honing in on everyone's like bad, right? Or weaknesses, right? And really focusing on your strengths. But it wasn't until I kind of made that shift in my head, Chris, where I realized like, this is silly. I am never going to be great at certain things. So why am I trying so hard to do that? Why don't I leverage my strengths to bring the unique value that only I can bring? And then I need to work to manage the things I'm not so good at so it doesn't get in the way. But once I kind of shifted my mind and then this idea of control what you can control, right? It really unlocked a lot for me. And I'll be grateful for the folks that gave me the bad advice, and for the folks that gave me the good advice.
That's great. A mentor of mine said, "Don't be a hybrid bike." And I remember saying, "What do you mean?" And, because that's like a out of body thought in a way. And he said, "Well, hybrid bikes are okay at off-road and okay at on-road." like, don't you want to be great at something?
Yeah.
And, and it's just landed so clearly. And having ridden I think we've all probably either seen or ridden a bike that wasn't ideal. And you're like, that totally adds up. Like I get it instantly. It's really
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah.
I love it when those things stick with you and you can refer back to them as you're trying to figure out and find your way. And, another advice point I got from somebody was, fail fast, fail cheap. And, and that means think about it, learn from it, grow. And, it's the notion of avoiding failure or never putting yourself in a position where you can ever fail on any level is just, you'll never grow if you
Yeah.
don't have some of that, experience as you go. So, from the Dodgers to hot dogs at the park to now working with the advisor community, what lessons? I mean, you talked about how storytelling is the common theme that always is prevalent. Are there any other kind of general themes that you feel like have been truisms across the spectrum of all you've done, and that kind of speaks to the way marketing should and be done right?
Yeah, no, I think so. And I'm actually curious to hear your thoughts on this one too, given your experience. But, if you kind of think back, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. Um, the frameworks and the way that we were taught in school, it's some of those things really hold up, and even changing industries a few times. What I realized is the core fundamentals of being a marketer are the same no matter where you are. And even as I have experienced the change in consumer behavior, the change in communication channels, the change in how people make decisions and all of the technology and everything, there's still a few core things, right, that never change. The way you solve them or the way, the tools in your toolkit have changed for sure. But I mean, it comes down to like that consumer insight, right? There, you have to know your customer. You have to understand what is at the heart, what is that need, what is the job to be done, what are they really, right, trying to solve, and then how do you fit in, how can you help, right, meet that insight, meet that need, solve that pain point, whatever language, right, you want to use. It really comes down to that, the knowledge of your customer, and then the very intentional way that you work to engage with them. And that's where the storytelling piece comes in. um, and I think what's been really interesting, especially in the more recent, years, although the tools are rapidly changing, is, marketing is this beautiful intersection of that insight, the data that we now have more and more, right? So much we don't even know what to do with, and the technology, which is changing like every day. And so to me, that is the kind of core foundation as we think about, a marketer's role to drive business growth in an organization. Um, and then, you just gotta keep up, right, with, like, all of the new tools and all of the things, and how do you apply all of that? I think the other tricky part, and that I've learned maybe in the last 10 years or so, um, marketers have a they probably have, and I'm biased, right, but they probably have, like, one of the hardest jobs in an organization. Like, what other function has to know as much about the customer, about the business, about the sales cycle, about the technology, about the data, on and on and on, right, than anyone else in the organization, right? Marketing is this really interesting nexus of all of that. And then how are you, like, right, making those connections across, right, channels and across other teams and functions and things as you, right, as an organization go to market and work to serve your customers? Like, it's just, um, I don't know, maybe I'm a glutton for punishment, but like I love the challenge of that, but it's not easy. And then, having to work with other functions who, right, have different priorities and other things. I mean, that is the universal thing, Chris, that hasn't changed in my experience over the last few decades.
Yeah, like you, one of the truisms is that it's customer first, customer always.
Yeah.
One of the big flaws in most marketing, or so much of the marketing, and the reason I think marketing has a bad rap in a lot of cases is companies want to tell people what to think. And that's just, it's frustrating and, irritating to the people on the other side, the actual customers. It's a missed opportunity to meet them where they are and give them the context for engaging on their terms. And the other maxim that I learned from a great creative director I worked with in Vienna, Austria, years ago, Werner Kleincheck. He said, "Honor the intelligence of your audience."
Yeah.
And, I've always thought about that because, obviously you want to keep things simple enough to easily get, and attention spans have gotten shorter all the time. But if we don't honor the intelligence of the people and even maybe challenge them a bit, I think we're missing an opportunity because nobody likes to feel dumb or talked down to. And there's so much advertising and marketing that misses that mark too. So those are a couple of things that I think transcend any category, any, exchange that's out there. And, I'm the byproduct of a educator mom and a psychologist dad. And, one of the things that they talked about to me, and when we talk about marketing and what I do, which they largely they understand, but they don't understand, right?
Right.
I'm sure you could relate to that
Uh-huh.
because people, what do you do? Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in marketing. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But that doesn't, really land unless you're doing it. But, talking about the way kids see the world and the way that they read your body language, read your culture, read the vibe. And adults do too. They just are better at shielding it, putting filters and walls up. And the brands that are most successful do an amazing job of being relatable on that level and true to authentically what they are, not, Disney's a great example. Kraft's a good example. Oscar Mayer definitely creates that, craveability and desirability. And it's not saying it's an amazing meal, right? It's saying it's fun, it's Americana, it's, all those things, right? And there's always that opportunity to relate on that front. You
Yeah, I
talked
think
about
that's
data. I'm curious. Feel free to add a thought there, but the question I was going to ask you is, data. How do you use it? What are the opportunities, and what are some of the drawbacks there?
yeah. And I do ask me next. I want to come back to the point because I think in the service industry, when you're not selling a widget, you're selling a service, like in financial services, there's something really interesting about, people are hiring a person. Right. And so as a brand, I think the challenges are kind of extra interesting when you think about authenticity and think about meeting your audience where they are and not talking down to them. So let's come back to that in a second, but I'll answer your question just about data. I mean, this has been such an education. I mean, for me personally, as a professional over the last few years, I mean, we're having conversations today that I was not trained for, right? It's like you learn it, on the job. I actually was just meeting with our marketing analytics leader this morning talking about some stuff. I think there's a few challenges here. I think one, there's more data than we know what to do with. Two, I think there's a lot of, especially in well-established businesses and something like financial services and, here at Capital Group, like there's so much technical debt. That's the term that they like to use here, where um, y- there's so much that has to happen to collect the data, to ensure it's clean, to then connect that data to the other data from here and all of that stuff that, for a company that's super mature and that, is kind of coming to this, in the last decade or so, it's messy. And so I think, there's a ton of data. It's kind of messy. There's a lot of noise in it. Not everybody knows exactly how to look at it and what to do with it. So we have an incredible insights and analytics, function here. But as a consumer of that and as a partner, you got to know enough to be dangerous, right? To kind of understand, right, what kinds of questions to be asking, how to interpret things. And I think that has been a real learning curve, not just for me, but I think as I look at our organization too, we're getting better and more sophisticated about it. But then once you kind of understand the basics, it's also around how do you hone in on the things that are really important and not get distracted by the things that aren't. And so I would say, data continues to be important to understand, um, you know, reporting, right? Like there's the basic kind of layers, kind of how's the business doing. There are, more sophisticated ways of looking at it to interpret, well, maybe why did that happen? What can we predict would happen? I would say as an organization, as me personally, we're trying to move up that curve, right? To get better and more sophisticated about how we use that to truly understand not just what happened, but why it happened and then predict what might happen. And that's going to be critical as we try to get more custom and more personal to meet our audiences where they are and deliver more and more, um, maybe not quite one to one, but a lot of, right? Some of it's one to one engagement and support for our clients. So I don't know if I answered your question other than to say, like, it's complicated. It's really complicated. And you've got to have some great professionals on your team, right, who can kind of help guide you with that. But if there's a professional out there who thinks that data, they don't need to know anything about it, like I don't know how you operate, right, in 2025. It's just such a critical part of the job these days.
Yeah, we counsel and advise clients to to prioritize customer-centric data as much, if not more than commercials, because the quickest way to accelerate your commercial performance is actually having happy customers.
Hmm.
And if you're not paying attention to that and measuring it and understanding it authentically, not just like CSAT, like which is a baseline, and
Right.
which is good, but there's so many other dimensions. And user experience being one of the largest opportunities for improvement on a constant basis. Why? Because expectations change daily.
Yeah.
Every time somebody comes to a digital experience, they want it to be better. And all the data they give us to as marketers to improve that experience. And if we're not, guess what?
Right.
That's why brand, kind of abandonment happens, is because those brands aren't learning and keeping up. And there's almost always in every category a proxy that they can shift to. If it's not Oscar Mayer, who is it? Right.
Right. Well, and
And
and even outside your category. I mean, you think
that's right.
about the way that we interact with brands across industries. You think about the way, you as an individual make buying decisions, right? You have a level of expectation, whether you're at Amazon or you're buying a car or you're booking an airline flight, that the brands that can't kind of meet that baseline, right, you're going to fail. And so people expect to be known. They expect to be, to receive personalized engagement and outreach. It's kind of, it transcends category, right? It's just kind of the way people expect to interact and be treated. And so it's a real, it's a challenge, right? And a fun one. But if you can't keep up, then as a brand, you're going to have a real hard time, not just distinguishing yourself, but also repeat customers, right? And kind of that, growth along the way.
One of the things that's fascinating, and I think one of the great ways to look as a marketer at the potential going forward, is we now have more data than we've ever had. We have more uh, solutions, ways to smooth out the friction points,
Hmm.
etc. And you can do it faster, quicker. You can enable humans to be more human,
Right.
which I think is really the magic we can, as marketers, provide as ways for that to happen. Because you said it, people are buying from a person and very consciously invested in that person, and then all the other stuff is not nice to have. It's like obviously critical too, but if you don't arm that person with what they need, then it all falls apart. Um, but the thing that we all as marketers have to think about is that all the data is look back, right? It's behind us. And what do we as humans want? We want that next experience. We want and so part of what we have to have is the ability to have confidence in our intuition, our gut feeling. And that to me is the clearest example of where AI won't take our job. Because it doesn't have that. I mean, it has versions of it, but it will never have the level of intuition that we have, and the kind of sensory context that, frankly, we can't put into a prompt. There's no syntax for it, right? Unless they become brains, and then, frankly, they're just another human.
Yeah, but
And
I think that's right. I mean, the marketing is an art and a science. The data is incredibly important, but I wouldn't rely just on that. You do have to add that kind of human discernment and, right, the nuance of all of it. It's why I also think AI will, hope we're right on this one, Chris. AI will continue to be a complement, right, to what humans are bringing, as even around like storytelling, as we were talking about earlier. I mean, I just don't think you can replace, right, the ability of a human to tell a story with a machine. So I think that, I mean, that's another thing I'm sure a lot of your clients are talking about, the use of AI in business as well. We're certainly talking about that here. And the conversation is around how do we use this as a complement, as another right part of the team, not to replace the team? Because there's so much, and especially in our business where it's about relationships, it's about, making the best decisions you can with the information you have, but the world is very unpredictable. And so, investing is you just kind of have to rely on, a great process, great frameworks, consistency, and then you make good decisions. And I just don't know that, AI is going to replace all of that.
Yeah. No, to me, it's the great, uh, it's a new ingredient that we can add to the mix of what we do and the way we do it. And it will, if we're using it wisely, it'll give us more time to do the things that we often either never get to or don't work through because we haven't been able to get away from some of the manual slash time consuming stuff. I mean, and that's another dimension, right? Marketers in agencies, having been on the client side, I know the way your day is packed with all kinds of stuff,
Yeah.
and marketing is so you touched on it earlier that you're talking to the product team, you're talking to the tech team, the analytics team, I mean, you're talking to everybody because you have to understand all of that
Yeah.
because it affects all the decisions you make, either in a small or a very large way.
Right.
Uh, and AI won't be able to solve that problem. It's not going to replace us in that way. So, um, Beyond the Brief is very much about like where do those ideas and sparks and things we stumble on sometimes that inspire work that makes a difference in a way that wasn't on the plan, wasn't in the brief, so to speak. Do you have any examples of that resulted in something that was kind of a surprise or a good outcome that you want to share?
Yeah. I mean, maybe I'll use a brand example here. This was a few years back at the Capital Group Private Client Services, our private client business, where we provide wealth management and investment management services to end investors and their families. So this is the B2C side of Capital Group. And we were working on redoing the brand expression. It's one of those things where the brand expression wasn't really telling the true story of private client services, and so we didn't change the products or services we were offering or the way we went to market with our clients, but we just needed a better way to talk about it and express it. And so we went through this whole brand exercise, right? All of the research, talking to clients, all the creative concepts and the testing, right? All the things, and came up with this great, just beautiful brand expression, new way, verbally and visually, to show up as Capital Group Private Client Services. And it's what you see today, right? If you were to go check out the brand out there. But we did all of that at the firm level. And what we didn't really think about initially was, hey, this is a business where when you hire a financial advisor, you care about the firm that they work for, but actually you really care about the person. You would never hire someone to manage your money that you didn't trust, right? Or most people wouldn't do
Right.
that.
Sure.
And what we kind of didn't think about initially was, if this is the expression of the firm, what are we doing kind of at the bottoms up level? How are we thinking about helping our advisors actually tell their story? And right, as part of that kind of, parent brand, but we didn't pay enough attention or think enough at the beginning about how do we actually help them express in the right way, right? Who they are, what they stand for, what that promise of an experience is, and then how do we enable them, right? And then be able to kind of supplement telling their story, and helping them build their own brand. So that actually spurred a whole second wave of work after we had gotten through all of the firm level branding, where we really spent a lot of time thinking about, how do our advisors need to be showing up? How do we want them to bring their own individual personal brands to life? And so we ended up doing this whole series of creating these very personalized biographies, including a video series where each advisor had their own video, and helping them with their social media profile, and really putting a lot of thought into helping them show up as like humans, right, as they're working to build this relationship, and making sure that that all hung with the kind of parent brand, right? Because they're going out representing the firm. So it's just kind of an interesting reminder and kind of lesson, Chris, as I was saying before, like, I mean, this is a service industry. You hire people. And so I've taken that with me, and even in my role now, where we are working with the financial advisors. Same concept for our sales force, right? Those financial advisors that we're trying to serve and get meetings with and talk to, yeah, they know Capital Group, right? So we have to continue to invest in the brand, but they also need to believe in the brand of their salesperson. They have to want to call that person and work with them and prioritize them. And so that's something on my mind kind of as we get going in this new role. Like, what are the ways in which we can help support our salespeople as well as we think about their brand? So that was kind of an interesting learning right along the way that you kind of can't have one without the other,
Yeah.
especially in the service business.
Well, and I love the fact that you actually took it down to giving them a platform, in the private client group example, giving them a platform to be themselves
Yeah,
and to, express. I'm sure you helped them, but, I'm sure you were also, because that's not, we're not actors, right?
right.
Advisors aren't actors, but yeah, how do you give them a way to be themselves and express their, their personality so that people can begin that process of, assuming that trust can be built, because it's not a given, right? That first conversation, it isn't present until you get past those kind of very unusual thresholds that are invisible but very present, right?
Right, right.
And different for some people. Some people, it's kind of like dating, right? Sometimes people date twice and realize they're going to get married, and some people date for years before they, get to that place, right?
Totally, or you wanna look at someone's profile, right, and kinda
Right.
figure out what are they into, what are they, "Oh, we have this in common, we have," right? It was how do we bring that to life for our advisors, and it was interesting, we provided them some help, we provided them some coaching and some practice, but, I would sit in these, kind of prep sessions with some of our advisors, and they'd be like, "Well, what should I say? What, like," I'm like, "Look, this is your story. There's no wrong answers, this is your story. How do you sit down in someone's living room and tell them about yourself, right? Same idea. How do we just bring that to life? And so you get this, wonderful mosaic of, right, 40 plus different, right, ways to tell their story. And of course, there's common themes that jive with the parent brand. But yeah, I think that part's really important. Again, it gets back to our conversation earlier about it doesn't matter what industry you're in, right? People expect a similar level of experience, of information. They validate, they kind of look for those common connections and things, whether it's with the product or the person or the people behind the product or whatever it is. I think it's the same principle here.
Yeah. One of the things I'm always fascinated by is marketing. People think they know what we do. And yet, some of the stuff that I'm most proud of is what I would call marketing adjacent. I
Hmm.
mean, it's not an ad or, internal communications in classic it's not stuff that the marketing department would naturally be who you'd go to
Yeah.
be involved, but it's catalyzing some change of behavior that has a positive outcome. Do you have
Hmm.
any examples of marketing adjacent or kind of non-traditional programs or support that you've done that um, made a difference in the world?
Yeah. I mean, maybe I'll use an example of it wasn't obvious that the marketing team needed to be involved in something, but we were. So this was a few years ago. We have a client. We call it our client portal. It's basically an app where our clients can go and visit their account. And we had learned as a business through our client satisfaction surveys, right, which is certainly a tool in the toolkit, that clients were highly satisfied with so many elements of our business and overall, but they hated in portal. The scores were terrible, and we were worried about like, oh, maybe it's not a total detractor of overall satisfaction, but we don't want it to become, and it kind of wasn't living up to the rest of the standards. And so that then kicked off a body of work to figure out, okay, well, what should our strategy be for, improving the client portal experience? And marketing, we got really involved where I don't think our IT team or our business necessarily could imagine all the ways that we could bring our expertise. And it started with championing and then kind of sponsoring a whole bunch of research with users, with clients to really start to understand what are some of the biggest pain points or what are some of the things that could make the biggest difference in terms of the portal. that work, which is super functional, but marketing ended up being the sponsor of it, helped us get to a roadmap. And actually, the thing that popped most coming out of that was unexpected. Everyone thought it was like, oh, it's because the portal doesn't do this function or this function, doesn't have this capability. It actually wasn't that at all. The biggest driver and the biggest thing that we should have been working on was the UX. It was the user experience. It was the design. It had some bells and whistles, but it was really hard to navigate, and people just hated using it. And so where we started from a strategic roadmap was, let's fix that, and then we can add, right, more bells and whistles down the road. And then from a marketing standpoint, we brought in UX designers. We brought in content strategists to think about what should things be called and how should we navigate people. I don't think any of that was on the radar of the teams that kind of day to day manage the portal. And so again, when you think about like marketing, it's so multifaceted, but at the heart of this example is that um, the customer insight, right? Knowing your customer, being the champion, putting the customer first. I think that's really the value that we can bring to a multitude of situations, whether it's super obvious or in this case, it wasn't so obvious. And now fast forward, as we continue to manage that digital product, right? Marketing's pretty involved with that because folks recognize the value that we
Yeah.
bring.
Yeah, it's the number of digital experiences that are built to deliver an outcome for a company instead of understanding how a user customer would prefer to go through the process of deciding what they want
Right.
to achieve, and even what it's called, and
Yeah.
how big it is, where it is on the page,
Right.
all these things that are
Uh-huh.
incredibly subjective, and today you can actually make those personalized and responsive to each
Yeah.
individual,
Yeah.
which is really where technology can do the good work that it's capable of, if we enable it. But
For
we have to
sure.
start with, what do they want,
We do.
right?
Well, and the
Yeah,
other thing that the marketing team kind of championed on that example was the analytics piece too, right?
yeah,
The measurement. How do we measure, is the user experience good? How do we get the right data points to tell us how people are going through this experience? What is the health of this product, et cetera? So, yeah.
that's great. So, for Capital Group, what's the latest? What are the two or three things you want to make sure everybody hears, or anything that's coming up that you can give a little preview on?
Yeah, well, so as I mentioned before, for those not familiar, Capital Group is a global asset manager, one of the largest in the world. We're privately held. Capital Group's mission is to improve people's lives through successful investing. We talked earlier about like all of the things, right, that the people we ultimately serve try to do. Um, the way that we do that is we want to become the partner of choice for those financial professionals that we serve and the clients that they then serve. And so, back to your earlier question around kind of product innovation and, um, I'd say at Capital Group, there's been a real big focus over the last several years. Is one way we continue to be the partner of choice is, how do we continue to innovate both in the products that we offer to meet the needs of these financial professionals and their clients, but also how do we continue to educate, right, and kind of be that thought partner as the world continues to change, the dynamics of this industry and all the choices are so plentiful. And so Capital has really been investing in not only some of those, we call them value added services, as we think about how to work with those advisors around, portfolio construction, thought leadership and guidance, analyses that we can provide, ways that we can support advisors and even building their own businesses. But also, we've done a lot of product innovation in the last few years, most recently launching and continuing to expand our suite of active ETFs, as well as we just launched in partnership with KKR a line of public-private interval funds to bring that public-private credit to kind of the mass investors, which is a pretty innovative space. And so we'll continue to build out that partnership and those options so that we can work, and continue to work with financial professionals and their clients to help them, right, lead successful lives, or improve, lead lives through successful investing. So that's where we're at today. It's been really
I
fun.
I love it. To me, the beauty of it, what you just described, is you've got great product and solutions mixed with a culture and a delivery system that's people first. And in that in an arena where so much of it is product first,
Yeah.
you're doing an awful lot that I'm sure is working really nicely and creating a great experience for your customers. So that's awesome. So now this has been fantastic conversation. Turning to you specifically, one of our common friends in Hollywood just called, and they're going to do a biopic on you. What's the name of the film, or who's going to play you, or what's the plot?
I knew you were going to ask this, so I did think about this. So we did this exercise several years back. It was one of those like leadership retreat things where you were paired up with somebody, and the idea was you would talk about like some of your most proud moments at work and accomplishments and things, and then the person that you were talking to was to write a word or a phrase on a rock. And they give it to you. And the idea was that of all the leaders in the room, right, if we all put our rocks right together, like think of all the amazing, right, skills and experiences and things we bring to the table. So my rock, the one that someone interpreted, right, and kind of wrote for me, said trail leader. So I think the name of the movie would be something along those lines. And it's really about the fact that I am so motivated and get so much satisfaction from working with teams of people to solve problems. And so I don't necessarily like, it's probably not trailblazer because I don't like to go out by myself. I'd much rather bring a team along, right? And whether we're blazing a new trail on our own, or we are, fixing an old one, or whatever it might be, it's that idea of how do you rally and work with a group of people to do something really hard. And I think if I reflect on my career, there's been a lot of that, some unintentional, some intentional. So I think it would probably be something along those lines. But we'll see. Hopefully, people would want to see that.
I love it. That's great. And what an apt description for a senior marketer too, because you're forging a path and bringing people together around things. That's great. I could see where that would make sense. Um, and another time I want to hear about the other rocks that when you put them all out on the
Yeah.
table, what a great exercise that is.
Okay.
So I'm sure some of our listeners are going to want to reach out and say hi. What's the best way to find you?
Yeah, sure. LinkedIn is a great way to find me, Sam Gammell, LinkedIn. I don't think there's very many of us out there, and I'd love to connect with other marketers or professionals and share ideas.
Sam, it's been an absolute joy having you on the podcast. We're really fortunate to have all the wonderful stuff that you shared, and I'm sure our listeners are going to be absolutely overjoyed to have been on this journey with you. Thanks again, and thanks, listeners. We'll see you next time on Beyond the Brief.